Yo, what's good? Testing one, two, one, two. Let me know how this mic is sounding. As y'all can see, I'm on location in New Jersey doing live investigative reporting about the run-ups. Like, just wanted to make sure everything is going smooth since I'm on location somewhere else and this isn't my usual setup. But hey, I just did a video talking about the civil matters and gave my opinion and takes on it. Lo and behold, what happens the next day? Cesar Pina is arrested like we didn't see that coming. Ray Charles, Stevie Wonder, they all saw that coming. And I thought, you know what, this is a good time to get on and jump on here and talk about it. I see a lot of people commenting, and some people giving great takes, some people giving not so great takes. But in this video, I'm just going to go through the indictment, the allegations. If you look in the description, I kind of set up a nice little outline of what we're going to discuss. So, one, I got an outline because y'all know how your boy could get. I could start just going off on a tangent, and we definitely don't want that to happen. But two, I want to have a little bit of structure. So we're going to talk a little bit about the indictment. We're going to go through it, pull it up, talk about the counts or the count, which is talk about how he made bond, why he made bond. Does that mean that there's still some paper out there? We're going to dive into all that in this video. If you're new to this channel, I'm Marcus, the debt-free dad. I'm a licensed attorney. I've been in the game for a minute. I got 13, almost 14 years in the game. Criminal defense, prosecution, investigations, white-collar crimes, bankers, CEOs, represented guys on the Ponzi scheme side. So, I kind of know this thing in and out, and I wanted to give my take. So, y'all make sure y'all chime in, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button so this video can get out to more people. Also, I might drop a link if anybody has something they want to chime in on or a question they want to ask. I put a poll up. People was like, yeah, do that when you're talking about these attorney reactions. So first and foremost, let's just go ahead and bring up the video. I feel like that's always the best way to start things. So let's go ahead, get everybody tuned in. Y'all definitely don't want to see my face like that. So let's adjust that so we can see this video and check out what's going on.
We're back now with an I-Team exclusive. Less than a week after we broke the story of investors who say they were scammed in a
Tony the closer broke the story.
Real estate venture promoted by radio host DJ Envy. There's a major development.
DJ Envy's longtime business partner has been arrested by federal agents in New Jersey. Cesar Pina has been charged with fraud. Investigative reporter Sarah Wallace has been all over the story. She has the latest from federal court in Newark.
Cesar Pina arrested by the feds this morning on a charge of wire fraud and brought here to federal courthouse in Newark. They say this may be just the beginning. He could face additional charges of money laundering.
You might know him on Instagram as Flippin' NJ, my friend Cesar Pina.
DJ Envy often had his pal, Cesar Pina, on the radio hosts The Breakfast Club show.
Started with no money, and here I am, $50 million later in real estate.
Promoting their real estate partnership. Now, in this federal complaint, the government says Pina engaged in a Ponzi-like scheme involving investors, adding Pina defrauded dozens of victims of millions of dollars. We interviewed many of them.
I lost $200,000.
$835,000 in total.
I lost a total of $64,000.
I lost $1 million.
Envy, whose real name is Rashawn Casey, was not charged, but many of the alleged victims say they were influenced by his celebrity.
He's advertising this all over the radio and on television.
Investors say Pina promised he would rehab and flip distressed properties, many in Patterson, giving a 30% profit within months. Dozens have now filed lawsuits saying they never got any of their investment back. Pina is accused of pocketing $17 million from just 4 properties. As news broke of his arrest, we were interviewing Jeff Robinson, who owns a food truck and car wash in Patterson.
My son was my world. These people took advantage.
His son, Jeff Jr., tragically died in a car accident 6 months ago, leaving 2 children behind. Jeff Jr. had invested $325,000 with Pina in this Passaic property. The dad says Pina then went dark.
After I buried my son, I called Cesar. Oh, bro, I'm going to meet you. I have text correspondence with Cesar, text messages. Oh, I'm running a little behind. You never met me here. But my main concern is getting what's due to those children. It's not fair. The comfort would be when my grandkids are in position when they have trust accounts with that money that he owes those children.
Pina pleaded not guilty. He has to post a $1 million bond and is being released on electronic monitoring. He cannot leave the state of New Jersey. No comment from DJ Envy. An inside source tells us that the iHeartRadio offices were visited by feds who took out electronic equipment as part of this investigation. From Newark, Sarah Wallace, News 4 New York.
All right. So let's go ahead and close that out. All right, so that's where we at right now. All right, that's the story. We're gonna talk a little bit about it. Before we jump in, there's a couple points in that story that was interesting. Just checking out the comments real quick here. He must have known the cause of. Yeah, I mean, it was inevitable. Plus, let's just be honest. Like I could count the amount of very intelligent criminals that I've come across in my years of practice on one hand. It ain't that many. Normally they all sloppy, they all leave voicemails and text messages and everything. But how did we get here? All right, let's just kind of back up, because I see a lot of people talking about what's going on, and they explaining it, they're talking about it, but they aren't really talking about the legal nuances. So what happens when a federal investigation starts from scratch? Normally, there's some type of complaint, there's a phone call, there's a YouTube video by Tony the Closer, by Pocket Watcher with JT, by any of the 100 of YouTubers who put out videos regarding what was going on with Cesar and DJ Envy. But there's always a starting point to get the ball rolling. Once that comes across someone's desk and they say, you know what, we should take a look into this, it normally falls on an investigator or an attorney to develop an investigative plan. Now, that depends on the agency. Agencies have different ways that they do it. Typically, in my experience, normally when you got a preliminary investigative team, you're looking at 2 agents, an attorney, maybe an auditor, someone to look at the numbers and crunch the numbers. So that referral, that complaint, whatever it is that kind of got everybody wanting to delve into it to see if there's a semblance of something there that where fraud actually could have potentially occurred, they pass that over to an investigative team. Somebody on that team is actually responsible for developing the investigative plan. I've done them, agents conducted them sometime. It normally depends on who just really takes the lead. If I'm working with an agent who has 20 or 30 years, they're probably going to do the investigative plan. Sometimes if it's an agent who's working with me and they may not have a lot of experience, for example, in real estate, they may say, hey, let's work together, come up with the investigative plan. All the investigative plan is the outline of what we're going to do. Typically, I think of data, documents, and discussions. Data, documents, and discussions. What is the data? The data is the information we can get through open source research. That's the news broadcast in this case. That's everybody who's been doing the videos. That's all of the witnesses who've been going on Tony the Closer and all these other YouTubers channels and talking about it. In a more structured case outside of this, the data would be the numbers. What did a person bill for? People who may have different complaints. But as always, data, then you want to get the documents. Then after you get the documents, you want to get the discussions. You get the data to point you into the direction of the documents. You get the documents to, one, build more evidence and corroborate some of the initial data you got. Once you got the documents, then you go into the discussions. Discussions are always last. I'm not talking to nobody. I'm not doing no interviews until I got everything I need. Because when I ask those questions, when I'm doing the interviews, I already know the answers to every question I'm going to ask. I'm just asking for purposes of, hey, one, are you going to provide and make a statement consistent with what I already know? Or if you're dumb and going to tell a lie, most times witnesses are always going to be forthcoming. Most times defendants' targets are always not forthcoming, or they try to finesse the system. So you get a complaint, It goes to an investigative team. Someone comes up with an investigative plan. Now, we're at the point where this guy was indicted and charged. And so the question is, well, what records did they look at? What documents and things did they look at? In order for this indictment to go through, they actually probably looked at all of Cesar's phone records. They probably had phone records, I'm sure of. I'm sure they had social media. I did hundreds of, probably thousands of warrants and subpoenas to get information and evidence of criminal conduct. They have bank records. Now, for those of you who may not know, bank records are actually unique in how you can get them. Most times, if law enforcement is investigating, doing a criminal investigation, and they're looking at a person's bank records, the person who bank records they're looking at is going to get some type of notice because they have to provide notice by law. Now, of course, there's an exception. You already know there's an exception to everything. You know, the feds, the boys ain't going to always give you notice. But generally, because of, you know, bank records, financial, the Bank Secrecy Act, all of these financial things, generally, if a law enforcement entity wanted to obtain bank records of an individual for purposes of a criminal investigation, they would actually have to reach out to that person and say, yo, we going to look at your bank records. If you want to object, here's how to do it. This is the amount of time you got. Now, of course, that's not always the case. How do the feds get around that? Well, they get around it if they can get a subpoena from a grand jury to get the bank records. What does that mean? Now, in order for this indictment and arrest to occur, the evidence had to be presented to a grand jury, a group of people whose job it is just to sit there and hear a bunch of facts and say, we got enough to charge, we don't got enough to charge. We got enough to charge. I mean, some states, they had, you know, if you're looking at state level, they had a grand jury sitting for a month, but this is federal. So they had to go to a grand jury. They had to present some facts. The grand jury had to say, hey, there are enough facts. So if a case had went to a grand jury and the feds get a grand jury subpoena, because a grand jury subpoena, the secret nature of the grand jury, there's already evidence there to actually charge and indict. That grand jury subpoena allows them to get those bank records and you won't know anything. You still making all your business transactions, transferring money to bad guys, good guys, DoorDash, whatever it is you doing, you know what I mean, OnlyFans, whatever it is you're doing is all going to be on those bank records, and that bank doesn't have to let you know. There's no obligation to give you notice. So if the feds investigate you and they give you bank records, that means they don't have a grand jury subpoena because they're letting you know we're requesting your bank records. And the alternative, if they got your bank records and you just don't know because you wouldn't know, that means they got a grand jury subpoena. That means that, yeah, you're probably going to get charged. So referral came in, went to an investigative team. Somebody on that team developed an investigative plan. They looked at the data. They looked at all of the documents. They had the discussion and the interviews. They have enough. Grand jury gets it. Grand jury subpoena to get the records secretly, bank records, or they had a non-grand jury subpoena where they had to disclose to the target that they were getting the bank records. Now is at the grand jury. The grand jury got all this information. Feds presented to the grand jury. The grand jury says, you know what, we got enough to charge this Cesar dude. Let's go ahead, charge him. That's how he got arrested. Now, this indictment is interesting because I looked at it, and I'm just be honest, it's a weird ass indictment. It's just based on the facts that I got. DJ Envy didn't take money by hand, but he got it. His ego is not. His ego is going to take him down. Yeah, of course, I agree. I feel fairly confident that there was some payola here. I feel fairly confident that DJ Envy probably was aware because the facts just don't look good. He used a lot of language of, you know, this is us, this is my partner, this is what we're doing. And let's just be honest, but for DJ Envy, Cesar wouldn't have had the ability to reach the audience and get the victims that he had. It's like if it would be the equivalent of if a person is a serial killer, but they got someone to go out there and get them the victims. Essentially, DJ Envy's role, because he has this celebrity, because he has this network, because he had these social ties and all this social capital, it allows Cesar to reach a market and a pool of victims that he would have never had access to but for that. But I want to pull up this indictment real quick because we're going to talk about this indictment. And then we're going to talk about this $1 million bond, what it means, how he paid it. Was the money illegal or was it legit money? We're going to talk a little bit about that. But let me go ahead and pull up this indictment real quick. All right, so what we got on the screen right here, let me go ahead and see if your boy can zoom this thing up a little bit. All right, this is the criminal complaint against Cesar Pina, aka Flippin' New Jersey. All right, and the general rule is if the person you're investing with has a chain and only wear a black T-shirt that says landlord crossed out trap lord or something like that, it's probably wild. Now, right now, he's only charged with 1 count of wire fraud, which is weird. I'm going to talk a little bit about it, but he's charged with 1 count of wire fraud. He knowingly and intentionally devised and intended to devise a scheme to artifice and defraud and obtain money and property by means of materially false and fraudulent pretenses, blah, 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 in violation of Title 18, Section 1343. Now, in short, what is the punishment for wire fraud? Well, 1 count of wire fraud, the maximum sentence could be 20 years in prison and a fine of $250,000 or double the amount of the illegal gain that the person got. So if Cesar got $15 million of illegal gain, he could be looking at double that and an actual fine, up to 20 years in prison. Now, it's interesting because there's 1 count here, right? But let's go and take a look at some things because I think the language is really important. Let's look at point number 2, okay? It says Pina and let's look at the language. His business partner, a well-known disc jockey and radio personality, Individual One. For purposes of Individual One, we'll just say DJ Envy. For purposes of Individual One, we'll hereinafter refer to him as DJ Envy, okay? So Individual One, aka DJ Envy, operated a company that conducted real estate seminars around the country. Together, they used DJ Envy's celebrity to promote various real estate enterprises that Pina controlled. During real estate seminars, private one-on-one sessions, advertisement, public appearances, and otherwise, Pina represented that he was a highly successful real estate investor, owned thousands of properties. I think it was something like 300. It was some crazy amount of doors he said he had properties in multiple states and had business relationships with numerous celebrities. Throughout these efforts, Pina developed a significant following that included hundreds of thousands of social media followers. Okay, now why is the language here important? Because 1, it's not a question. I guess, some of the videos I saw, they were like, whoa, well, was Envy a partner? Did he know? They're flat out saying that Pina and his business partner, a well-known disc jockey, aka Individual One, aka DJ Envy. So it is uncontroverted that there's enough evidence here to put these guys together as business partners. Now, the interesting thing is going to be, are they business partners and on what level? I seriously doubt. I mean, if it is, hey, shout out to Envy for being that smart, but I seriously doubt if they have any paperwork, any formal paperwork. Most times when you see these types of schemes, there's just a meeting of the minds, if you will. They agree that, you know what, we're going to be unofficial business partners off of the table. Now, it's going to be interesting because a few things in that video that we saw in the beginning are of note. But one of the things I found weird about that complaint is that there's only 1 count of wire fraud. And I did videos discussing wire fraud before. Essentially, wire fraud, normally is mail and wire fraud. And we love those. Prosecutors love those charges. Hell, I love those charges because wire fraud gives you a little bit longer statute of limitations to maneuver with when people are committing fraud. So normally you'll see mail or wire fraud. Essentially, wire fraud is when you use telecommunications to do anything related to the fraud. So most of the times it's in the form of a money transaction. When that money transaction goes from bank A to bank B, it's traveling through state lines, through internet routers and high-speed Wi-Fi and broadband networks. that constitutes a count of wire fraud. So it's interesting because they only charge one count of wire fraud when I can guarantee you that there were numerous money transfers. We've seen all the time. People donated, people gave this dude $250,000, $325,000. They're not just, like, hey, let's just go and give this guy a check. But they aren't giving this dude a briefcase full of money from their money bin like they're Scrooge McDuck. These are big ass transfers for large amount of money, six figures, $250,000, $300,000 that are being transferred from bank account A to bank account B. So it's interesting, and I think it's kind of odd that in the entire charging instrument, they have just this one count of wire fraud. Typically, what will happen is, I've seen this. I had hundreds of cases where every time there's a deposit going to and from that we can identify as being fraudulent, count one of wire fraud, 2, 3, 4. I had so many indictments and investigations where a person is charged with 17, 20 counts of wire fraud for every transaction. So it strikes me as odd that there's only this one count, considering the volume of money that was transferring between victims and anything that Pina had going on. Why is that? One, the instance that they got is a knockout case. They talk about, y'all say it all the time. Oh, the feds got a 96, 97, whatever it is, % conviction rate. Well, because most times people aren't charging things that they can't prove. So that one count is clearly a knockdown case. That's the reason they brought it. Why they didn't bring any other counts could be a little bit interesting. I had my theories, but I'll do that in a little bit later video that I'm going to do when I talk about what's DJ Envy's exposure. And during the course of this criminal investigation and trial process, how could they find information tying up to Envy? So I want to stay on subject here, and we're going to focus on Pina. So the next thing is, they said that this dude made a bond of $1 million, right? And I want to make this so people know generally how bonds work. And sometimes it's different, but more or less, this is how bonds, bail, all of that stuff typically work. Because I have seen some video where, like, yo, if this dude can make $1 million bond, he still got some bread out there. And that's just not the norm. As someone who's been doing this well over a decade, financial crimes is probably my area of expertise. That money is long gone. Even if you look at the press release that was put out by the New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office, some victims received a small portion of their compensation back, of their money back. The majority of them didn't get anything. And honestly, the majority of them are probably only going to get pennies of the dollar, because that's just kind of how this goes. That money most times is long gone, either in assets that are depreciating assets, or they use that money to pay people back, or they just screwed it off at the strip club. I mean, that money is gone so many places now, but I've never seen a case where, very rarely, a large portion of the dollar for dollar return is there. So I don't think it's a fair point to say if this dude made $1 million bond, he still has a substantial portion of the money. He might have some, but I guarantee you probably 60 to 75%, if not more, is probably finito. And when they start selling those depreciating assets, it's probably not even going to yield enough to, have a 50 cent on the dollar return. So typically when you're talking about bonds, if you have $1 million bond, you're on the hook for 10% of that. So you have to come up with about $100,000 generally. Now, there are some exceptions. I'm just talking about generally, this is how bonds work. So in actuality, $1 million bond is really not hard to make because people have some type of assets. How many times have y'all seen, man, it happens all the time, where grandma puts up her Cadillac with her rims and her house or her Winnebago. Like, $1 million bond is a lot of money in theory when you hear it, but in actuality, you're talking about putting up 10% of the bond. Most people are not going to have $100,000, but they'll have at least one asset that's worth $100,000. It could be land, it could be a house. Most times it's a house. Poor grandma, Mima put her house up to get Pookie for bond. That's why you got, hey, you put this house up, we giving you this electronic monitoring. So the reason they got him on electronic monitoring is, one, they want to know where he at, and they view him as a flight risk. That's normally commonplace with these types of cases, because when people steal a lot of money, they probably got some of it stashed somewhere. They got the resources to, try to go somewhere where they don't have any extradition. So they're like, yo, we're going to let you go, but you're going to have these pre-release conditions where you got to put this ankle monitor on, bro. And if you go farther than this thing, it's going to ping, and we're going to have somebody there to scoop you up. So that's how his whole bond situation is. So I think it's inconsistent to say that he made $1 million bond, and because he made that bond so easily, he still has a substantial portion of the funds left, because grandma put up their house all the time to get somebody out. That house may be worth $200,000. Boom, they can meet that 10% requirement. He can go. Now the interesting thing, and I couldn't find anything this, but normally when you have people, you see it a lot of times in cases where there's just big money involved. Normally it's defendants I represented who are drug dealers, who had trafficking charges. When you have these types of crimes that deal with large amounts of money, normally when the judge puts a bond on you, they have a rule. Essentially, it's a source of funds rule. Source of funds rule essentially means that, we're going to put this $1 million bond on you, but any monies you use to get this bond is going to be subject to a source of funds rule, where if you can prove that the funds that you use to make this bond is from legitimate means and not ill-gotten gains, it's going to stay there, and we're going to hold on to that money till we figure out where things went. So I couldn't see or find any information if the judge put a source of funds rule on there, but I'm guessing that he probably did, because that's just something normal. That's just something consistent with what we'll see with these types of financial crimes, with big time drug dealers who got kingpin charges. You'll normally see a source of funds rule on there because they don't want you to bond out with all your drug money or your Ponzi scheme money. That's normally how it goes. Now, how is this going to play out? I'll touch on that a little bit later, but here's the interesting question, okay? Does DJ Envy have some exposure? Yes, I did a video when I talked about the civil stuff. Yes, he clearly has exposure. They said in that video that they executed a search warrant of iHeartRadio Studios, right? Now, what does that mean? If they executed a search warrant, it could be one of two things, right? And it's one thing. It can't be two things. It's one thing, right? They didn't raid iHeart Studios and execute a search warrant to pull out. And I know back in the day, in the old school days, when you do a search warrant, you would come out with boxes of stuff. Now you just come out with laptops and hard drives and unallocated clusters, all of this stuff that's is kind of above my skill set, but I know a little bit about. But typically, if they raided iHeartRadio, this has nothing to do with Cesar, because everything they needed to do this indictment and arrest Cesar has already been done. All they're doing now is looking at DJ Envy. So the fact that they ever executed a search warrant on iHeartRadio shows that, one, they had enough evidence to have a judge say, yeah, you know what, there's likelihood that there's some evidence there. We can go get that evidence. Let's go and get that evidence. So, hey, if I was Envy, hey, if you don't want to holler at your boy, holler at somebody. And it's funny because I looked at the news and DJ Envy hired a real estate lawyer. Like, bro, here's the general rule of thumb. When do you hire a real estate lawyer? You hire a real estate lawyer for a real estate transaction. The real estate lawyer should have been hired prior to entering into any business with Cesar, if you're DJ Envy or any of the people. Because, I mean, let's just keep it a buck, right? It's terrible that these people got scammed, but in order to fall for any scam like this, you have to be greedy. People who aren't greedy don't fall for this, because someone who's not greedy going to be like, bro, you saying I can get 30, 45% return in 3 months? Over a year, that's over 100% return. That just doesn't make sense. And if that was true, even if that was true, why the hell would he need $250,000 from an investor? If I'm a multi-billionaire and this dude was getting 30% every 3 months, you don't think he could just go to a bank? He could go to BlackRock. He can go to some institutional investor, Elon Musk, and flip his billion real quick to make, a crap load of money. So you can clearly tell that greedy people typically fall for these schemes. But the people who were investing, and this is just this is the best way to approach it. if you're going to do an investment with anybody, especially somebody who rocks a black tee and a chain all the time, if you're going to do an investment of $250,000, $300,000, you're pulling the equity out, take 5, 6, 10 racks, hand it to an attorney, a certified public accountant, just to say, yo, I want to invest in this. Can you research it for me and let me know if it's a good investment? People will do that for you. Most times they probably do it for a very minuscule fee. They're probably not even charging 5 racks, because I'm just going to be honest. If somebody would have came and been like, yo, DFD, here, take these, here, take this quick $2,000 and let me know if this is a good investment. I could have told you it's not a good investment in probably a half an hour. It would have literally took me a half an hour to, one, look at the properties that are being sold, look at the ownership, look at the past ownership transactions, look at the LLC paperwork, see who were the owner, operators, see if there was a board of directors. If an LLC doesn't have a board of directors, it's only just one individual or 2 individuals, big red flag. If you're bragging about your previous criminal record, big ass red flag. But there are a lot of things that could have been done to reduce the risk. So if you're going to invest a large ass amount of money that you're pulling out your house, take some money out and just give it to somebody to say, yo, is this a good investment? All right. So DJ Envy has exposure. He hired a real estate attorney, which makes no sense. Bro, you need a criminal attorney, someone who's familiar with government, federal investigations, and the criminal process. Right now, the time for real estate transaction lawyer, that shit has came and went. So you need a criminal defense attorney. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is, there's a string of evidence that they're pulling that. Hence the reason they were able to get a search warrant authorized to go in there and pull out all the stuff from iHeartRadio. Now, it's interesting because we don't yet know what is the government entity who executed the search warrant, because it could be a couple, okay? It could be, my first thought, or the first candidate is, it could be the FCC, the Federal Communications Commission. Hey, what's going on, bro? I appreciate you tuning in, BTB. I appreciate that, man. Y'all make sure y'all go check out his channel too. Dope channel. But it could be the FCC who's executing the search warrant. Why could it be the FCC? Well, because of something that is commonly talked about by a lot of YouTubers, Pocket Watcher with JT, Eli, What Happened to Common Sense. A lot of YouTubers talk about it, but Podcast Payola. The FCC has strict guidelines where you have to disclose when you have a business relationship with a guest, because it creates a conflict of interest. Let's think about this. I'm an attorney, okay? I've been doing this game for a while. Let's say that somebody came into my office, and I was an attorney who did car accidents, right? Somebody came in my office because they got hit by a Pepsi truck, and they come limping in. They come to my office. I'm like, yo, I can help you. I got you, right? Now, this case is going to take some time. I'm going to take a third of your recovery, but we're going to finance everything because I feel that good about this case. If I tell them that, a lot of times when people are in those situations, they got to get a loan against their possible recovery because they need money to get through while I'm doing all this leg work. So they have financial institutions out there who will say like, hey, your case is good. We'll loan you some money in anticipation that you're going to get this settlement. So if I had a company, so I have a law firm, I'm taking this person on as a client, but I also have a separate business entity that's a company who provides loans to people based on the strength of their potential settlement or recovery from civil litigation. I can't just be like, yo, go over there to my business, we're going to square you away. Or I can't just refer them there and not tell them that, yo, you have to know I own this business, so I have an inherent conflict. I have to disclose it. It works the same way. If I'm on here and I have a guest on here and he's talking about how dope his course is, and I'm like, yo, your course is great. It's dope. Your course gave me so much game. Wow, it was worth the $5,000, but for a limited time only, $59.99. Like, if I'm on here giving this dude props for his course, but he paid me to come on my platform, I'm legally obligated to disclose that. So the option number 1, the people who came and executed a search warrant on iHeart, it could be the FCC, because there's a possibility that, hey, people were getting paid on the back end to come on the Breakfast Club. And, you know, the question is, was Envy selling his celebrity and his access and his network on the Breakfast Club? Now, I don't know if he was or not, but it is a strong possibility. And let me go ahead and I want to play something for y'all real quick. Let me see. I got a different setup here. Oh, it's all good, bro. I appreciate you tuning in, Wolverine. It's all good, bro. Now, do I want to add that? Nah, let's pull this up real quick. Let's see. Let's get rid of that. I just want to bring something up because right now we on option number 1. What government entity went and executed a search warrant on iHeartRadio? So my first option would probably be the FCC. Now, why would it be the FCC, DFD? Because of this clip. Shout out Pocket Watcher with JT. Like I said, if you bring somebody on your platform and you're endorsing them as a professional for a course, for anything, and there's a monetary transaction that occurred, you have to disclose that to your guests. If not, that is a crime. Let's take a listen. Let's take a listen because
I am the only woman on death row in Louisiana.
Oh,
yeah, I'm
Antoinette Frank. But
you've heard of me.
Let's go here.
I created Cesar. There was no Cesar. Cesar wouldn't have the lifeline or life that he had without a DJ. I created Matt. If I wasn't there, if I didn't create Matt, if I didn't have Matt speak, if I didn't put Matt on the Breakfast Club, if I didn't recommend people to Matt, there would be no Matt. Not one. Not a lick. EYL is here because of me. Because of me going on their show. Me putting them on the Breakfast Club. And I don't have a problem saying it to any of their faces because they know. I created Cesar. There was no Cesar. Cesar wouldn't have the lifeline or life that he had without a DJ.
All right. So what does that prove? One, this dude clearly knows the value of his brand and his platform. And that's crazy. I will tell you right now, that's crazy if Envy is sitting up here on iHeartRadio, this broadcast owned by, and he's sitting up here on iHeartRadio and, you know, he doing some payola. But there are allegations and there are people who came out who said, hey, who came out and said, hey, Envy wanted 20% of my business and not to pay me for 20% of my business, but in exchange for that 20%, he was going to allow me his platform, access to his platform, to his content, because it gives me a whole new pool of clients, or in some cases, victims, right? So that's number one. It could be the FCC who are going into their office because there was a violation of that rule. Option number two, it could be the Postal Inspector General's office. If it was some type of mail and wire fraud, it could be the Department of Justice, just a straight U.S. Attorney's office. What's the more likely scenario? The more likely scenario is, honestly, it's probably all of them. Oftentimes when you have these cases and so many people have an interest in the case, you'll have a task force created where it's just all of the alphabet soup boys. It may be the Postal Inspector General. It may be the DEA, the FBI, the U.S. Attorney's Office. It may be some local prosecutors from within New Jersey or New York who are looking at this. I would probably lean, though, more towards the FCC, though, because I'm thinking if it was anything related to the properties out of New Jersey, that probably would have, it's not impossible, but it likely would have been, you know, something coming from the New Jersey U.S. Attorney's Office. We don't know yet, but as a guess, it's going to be interesting to see who went in there. Whoever went in there is going to be telling, but chances are it's probably a task force with all of the alphabet boys at the table. Like, you know what? We all are going to get a piece of this. And so now we're talking about what took them to so long to even look at these dudes in the first place. It's just that they had a really good loss amount. They had a loss amount that was a good loss amount. That's why, you know, you talk about the Jay Morrison's and him 500, all these other guys out there who probably doing scams. It's just not worth it. $1, $2, $3 million may not necessarily be worth it. Think about it. If you got two investigators, an attorney, an auditor, and support staff. Let's just use those four. You got two investigators, an attorney, and an auditor, investigating one case, right? Let's say that investigation takes 1 year. Most times investigations take longer than that. 1 year. Let's not talk about the resources, the hours of serving subpoenas, going out, conducting interviews, travel, if you're going to different states, hunting people down. Let's not talk about all that. Let's just talk about the salaries. Hey, it's the federal government, but hey, those guys get paid. You probably got an attorney who making almost $200,000. You probably got 2 agents who may be making $150,000. You probably got an auditor who's making $150,000. You're talking about, $500,000 of salary alone in a year to investigate somebody. So investigating somebody like $1 million wouldn't even be worth it, because those cases do get investigated and prosecuted, but it has to make sense for the return, the loss amount, and the amount of human capital resources we got to lose. So these guys been doing this scheme since 2017. You're talking $40, $55 million, something crazy like that. Hey, those are big time numbers. Those are going to perk up anybody's eyebrows. Now, the question is going to be, Envy has some exposure. We know they ran up in iHeart Studios to pull out some computers. We know if they did that, it's probably nothing related to Cesar, because his indictment and arrest is already done. They already got those facts. So now they're looking into DJ Envy. I'm thinking more FCC, but it could be all of the alphabet boys at the table. So, and I'll do a video later on covering Envy's exposure and how they can connect the dots from Cesar to Envy. But the question is going to be, this is always the question, okay? Hey, if these dudes were acting in concert, okay, if Envy is found to be an accessory before, during, or after the fact, accessory before, during, or after the fact, or after the fact, they all carry different exposures. If he's found to be, which he probably likely would on these facts, even though he's not charged with anything yet, I'm just talking, off of what we know so far. If he's found to be an accessory during the fact, he can be charged exactly the same as the principal or the person who's committed the fraud, whether he did it or not, because he's an accessory during the fact. But the question is going to be, hey, if you got Cesar over here with charges over his head, or a charge over his head, and then Envy out here with exposure, okay, let's talk about snitching, right? I don't know if y'all remember back in the day, they had the whole stop snitching movement and everything. Now, first, I want to define snitching, because people are really unclear on what snitching is, okay? This is snitching, okay? This is not snitching. If I gave Cesar money and he invested in something and he sucked ass at it and took my money, and I go to tell law enforcement, that's not snitching, because I lost my damn money. I'm Joe Civilian. I'm doing my due diligence, okay? Not snitching. Joe Civilian telling on the criminal, hey, that's what we want people to do, all right? Hey, I know that's square, but hey, your boy is a square, because, squares, we get to enjoy what we work for without having to look over our shoulder from somebody taking it from us, especially the feds, right? So that's not snitching if you're a square, Joe Civilian, and you're talking about how you got finessed or scammed or robbed. That's what you're supposed to do. The definition of snitching is when two people, okay, this is not definite, 2 or more people engage in a criminal endeavor, right? And they get caught. And one person decides to tell on his other co-conspirators. That's the definition of a snitch. And I've done this. I mean, I've had thousands of clients pass through my hands as a defense attorney, as a prosecutor, conducting investigations. So I had thousands of persons charged with criminal crimes pass through my hand. I can count on one hand how many of them didn't snitch, okay? I can count on one hand. It was only 2. It was only 2 people out of the thousands. And at one point, I'm talking about, I had 300 active cases at any given time as a defense attorney, just going through, taking care, trials, jury trials, it's all of that. I can only think of 2 individuals who didn't say shit, who didn't snitch. So somebody's snitching. Somebody's going to tell. It's inevitable. Hey, when you live a life of it, now Cesar, I don't know. He said he already been incarcerated, so I don't know. Maybe it's comfortable for him. I can't tell. I'm just talking from my experience as an attorney and dealing with people involved in the system and with this snitching thing. It's a 99.9% chance someone is going to say something. Now, we know in the civil cases that were brought against Cesar, he actually filled out a civil affidavit saying that, hey, Envy didn't have nothing to do with it, and everybody will do that civilly because you don't got to worry about going to the pokey. You don't got to worry about going to the pen and doing time and all that. Now that jail is on the line, now that he has a wire fraud charge that has a maximum of 20-year sentence, now that they ran up in iHeart Studios and they pulling out computers, that's a 99.999% chance they're looking at something to be associated with what went on related to Envy and his role working at iHeart Studios. Now, the question is, who would get the sweetheart deal? Hey, the sweetheart deal is going to go to the person who runs and tells first. Whoever runs and tells first, normally, hey, man, they go Tekashi 6ix9ine it up. You know what I mean? Like, yo, 6ix9ine, hey, he was a snitch because he was engaged in the criminal activity. So he would be classified as a snitch. I definitely agree with that. But yeah, the 6ix9ine thing is going, the first person, well, it depends, okay? Normally in a situation when you got two criminal conspirators, all things are equal. The first person to come to the table, the first person to get their 6ix9ine on is probably going to be the person to get the sweetheart deal, right? That's why I'm gonna tell you, that's why that indictment for Cesar looked weird, because I'm like, why there's only a one count indictment? That's kind of strange, but that's neither here nor there. Normally, if all things are equal, the person who comes first with the best story and the best facts to corroborate the evidence that the feds already have is going to get the sweetheart deal. But this is a little bit different, because I'm gonna tell you what would DFD do if this case was sitting on my desk and they was like, yo, no, I worked this case up, I worked this investigation up, and I'm looking at this case. I'm gonna tell you right now, I could care less about Cesar. If it were me, and this is just me, I'm focusing on DJ Envy. Well, DFD, why would you focus on DJ Envy? For a few reasons. One, you are the big name that's known and associated with this case. I would never know who the hell Cesar Pina. Cesar Pina, that shit sound like some new ranch dressing that came out. I have no clue. I would have no clue who this dude was. I would think he was some topping or something that goes on a salad at some vegan spot. Oh man, you try that new Cesar Pina salad? Like, I would have no clue who he was, but for Envy. But for Envy, he wouldn't have had the exposure to the pool of clients or victims. So me, if it's sitting on my desk and all of the years of work I've done on both sides of the aisle, I think Envy has more value and he will actually be a more rich target to actually investigate and prosecute. So, normally the first person to run to the table has all of the facts, but if it were me and it was in my case and I'm sitting on my desk, I'm going to make my run at Cesar. I'm like, hey, bro, you looking at this 20 years, you got a wife, like how much did she know? You can start pushing those pressure points because Envy is the rich target. His network is really the reason why Cesar was able to pull in so much money, because essentially DJ Envy bringing this guy on the Breakfast Club and on social media magnified his reach exponentially. So Envy would be the target rich environment. And just let's keep it a buck. From a career standpoint, if you successfully prosecute a personality like this for fraud, you might want to run for mayor afterwards. Like, yo, I'm tough for crime. I put DJ Envy in jail. So he might end up being the donkey of the day. He might end up being the donkey of the day. But that's kind of how I look at it and how I see it if it was on my desk. Normally, if all things are considered equal, they both have equal value. As the first person to run to me with the best story that could corroborate the facts I already had, you're going to get the sweetheart deal. But when there's an influx in power, that would be the equivalent of, think about it. If I'm a prominent attorney who had X amount of years working with law enforcement, but on the side, I'm running a criminal illegal operation. Do you think they give a damn about prosecuting Pookie or Ray Ray? No. The guy with the biggest name and the biggest exposure is the best target to get. That's why I think that, they probably would, I would at least lean on Cesar to see what I can get on Envy, because he's the much more rich target. He's the much more well-known target. And, you know, hey, like I said, that a case like that, you may become mayor one day. You may become mayor, a governor, or something like that. You can play the tough on crime card. But that's kind of where we at. That's where Cesar is. That's how we got here. I'm going to give a quick recap. How did we get here? A complaint came in. A referral came in. Really, what probably started this was, you know, all the guys on YouTube, Tony the Closer, all of those guys who were doing their research and bringing up these cases, all these victims who were speaking out on these platforms. Once that came in, that matter got assigned to an investigative team. It probably was a couple of auditors, probably an attorney, probably a couple of agents, armed agents who were going to do everything. They created an investigative plan. That investigative plan lays out the framework. These are the allegations. This is what we know so far. What do we got to look at? Normally, it's the 3D rule. We're going to look at the data. What does the data say? The paperwork say? What does as data, documents, and discussion? What do we know from our referral? What can we issue subpoenas for and get information to execute search warrant, to get information to get? Then the discussions. Now that we know everything, let's go out and talk to the witnesses. Let's go out and see if the target want to talk. I seriously doubt it. If the target talked in this case, he would be an idiot. But I don't know. DJ Envy went on the Breakfast Club against his attorney's advice and made a statement about it when he probably shouldn't have. So I don't know. And I'll be honest, most times people talk to law enforcement without their attorney. I don't know why, but most times people are like, man, I need a lawyer. Man, all that happened was, so that's what happened. Referral, investigative team, investigative plan, data, documents, discussions. With those documents, we talked specifically about bank records. When the feds get your bank records, because of bank secrecy laws, they have to let you know that they're getting your bank records because you have a certain amount of time to appeal that. Now, how can they get around that? If your case goes to a grand jury and they can get a grand jury subpoena, they can request those documents from the bank, the financial institution, and you won't know. You will be completely oblivious to the fact that they going through all your records, can see your OnlyFans subscriptions and the whole nine. But the bank records is the sweet spot. That's where you find out all the transactions, where where everything is going to be. Once they got those, they looked at all the records. They went to a grand jury. The grand jury is a group of people who said, yo, we got enough to indict this dude. Let's indict him, charge him. Next thing you know, they hauling this guy in for arrest. We talked a little bit about his bond. He got a $1 million bond. Most times in these cases, the judge will put a source of funds rule on there that says, yo, if you pay this bond, we need to know where this money came from, because if it's ill-gotten gains, if you can't prove it's legit, your ass is staying in jail and we're going to hold on to your money. I couldn't find information to see if that was out there, but there's a possibility that it was out there because that's just commonplace in Ponzi scheme cases and high-level drug cases where people have access to resources and can make bond. Because he made $1 million bond is not indicative that there's large amounts of the stolen money, the defrauded money out there. That's just not the case. I'm guessing 60 to 75%, if not more, is already gone, either spent up at the strip club, given to friends, family, or bought in assets, most times being depreciating assets like stupid ass chains, whack ass cars, a bunch of stuff like that. There's probably some properties out there, but most times it's depreciating assets. That's why people can't get the return. So just because he made $1 million bond is only 10% in most cases. He only had to come up with $100,000. In the words of my guy Wolverine, your grandmother can put her house up to make $100,000 bond. So just because he made that bond doesn't mean that there's a large amount of money there. We know that some federal agent ran up in iHeart Studios to pull out some stuff. We don't know who it is, but what we can tell is if they ran up there, they're looking specifically at DJ Envy and acts that occur within the confines of iHeart Radio, because everything they got on Cesar is already there. That's why they did the indictment and the arrest. So Envy has some exposure. Side note, fire your real estate lawyer, because why the hell are you got a real estate lawyer when your ass is looking at potentially having criminal exposure? That's just stupid. There's a lot of good guys out there. Find one, because that real estate lawyer ain't going to do it for you, bro. If they try to take down the Breakfast Club. No, man, I'm not trying to take down the Breakfast Club, man. I like the Breakfast Club. it's just gonna be, hey, it ain't gonna be no club. It's just gonna be breakfast. It's gonna be Charlemagne up there. It's gonna be Charlemagne up there by itself, man. You got to talk about it though. Because I'll be honest, man. Like, I give iHeartRadio a lot of credit because, like, hey, I don't know what was on that subpoena, but I can guess what probably was on that subpoena. You know, when you put a subpoena, you got to provide some details, a little bit of details. The justification is why we coming in. And like, yeah, I was surprised Envy got a job. Shout out to iHeartRadio for holding the brother down. Because I'll tell you right now, if you my employee and they run up in my shit because of you, your ass is gone, all right? You're gone and you're going to get full cooperation. Everybody cooperate. He's down there 50 with a 2-year-old. He can't afford to go to jail. Yeah, I agree. Damn, he got a 2-year-old. Oh, yeah, I think he did. I didn't know. I forgot. I know Charlotte just had a kid, but yeah. Tony Little said they was buying Taco Bell with that money. Man, that's a lot of fucking Taco Bell, man. See, habits don't change, though, man. No matter how much money you got, hey, the hood is the hood, man, if you like it. Yeah, I agree with that. Caesar going through that money. I don't think any of that money is there. Yo, one of my homegirls told me that, I don't know how true this is, but they was like on Twitter, they said that it was trending on Twitter and people was going in on Envy's wife. And the only reason they were talking about it and it came up trending because I guess she had a lot of pictures up there holding like extravagant bags and standing in front of these fly ass cars and shit. And they was like, a lot of those pictures are gone. And it's funny because I just laughed because I was like, yo, social media, whatever you put on some social media is out there. Just know that. Like, that would be the first place I go. When I get a case come on my desk, I was doing defense work, and I'd be like, okay, when did this happen? And I look, I'd be like, okay, December 14th, 2021. Then I would go on social media and type in the person's name because people don't block their account. People want to get clout and they want to have a lot of followers, so they normally have everything public. I type in that person's name and then I scroll down to that date. And literally 80% of the time when I scroll down to that date, it's something incriminating me. I'm like, dude, why would you put, man, no, I didn't assault nobody. Then I scroll to the date. Man, I'm fitting to show up and show out. They don't know who they talking to. I'm like, so if it's on social media, it's out there. If you got to the point where you're deleting something, they already got copies of it. You know what I mean? Hey, it's a cold game. And for a long time, since social media has been in existence, man, law enforcement got so many dummy accounts, man, that they look at that, man, they probably all sorts of subscribers. So it's going to be interesting. Now, I will tell you, it is hard to get some information from some social media platforms from subpoenas, but you can get it. I mean, it's not really difficult. They just changed their privacy laws. They changed their privacy terms and conditions so much. But most times, most social media platforms, if it's an active investigation, it's not really hard to get. You may have to go through a few extra hoops, but you can get it, access to it. So, it's not just about what you post on social media, but I'm sure DJ Envy probably got a shitload of messages in his inbox from people like, yo, Envy, your boy screwed me over, man. What's up? Now, I don't know if he replied to those messages or not, but I know they in there. Because trust me, if somebody stole my money, man, I'm reaching out to them on MySpace, Facebook, Black Planet, whatever app you can smoke signals, carrier pigeon. So I'm sure they got all sorts of interesting messages, but whatever you got on your social media account is already obtained. So it's really doing no good to delete anything. Only thing deleting to do is make you look a little bit more ridiculous in my standpoint. But that's it. That's how Cesar got here, because we ain't nowhere. We at home or on the job chilling, watching this video where our asses need to be in the comfort of our own home without ankle bracelets, hopefully. And if you do, hey, do your time so you can get that ankle bracelet off. But that's how he got here. How's this going to play out for him? Well, this is going to play out real easy for him. It's going to play out with him taking a plea agreement. It's inevitable. You think he's going to take this to trial? Let's just be realistic. Really? You think that Cesar Pina is going to take this to trial and they're going to have to bring in Tony the Closer, Pocket Watcher with JC, and DJ Envy, and all of these people from YouTube? Man, that'd be the trial of the century, man. Ain't nobody about to go through that type of stuff. So he's going to end up taking a plea agreement where his ass is going to do some time behind bars. Not sure what his potential exposure is. His exposure, it could be a max of up to 20 years. It depends. He does have some, because how sentencing works with the feds is, let's say I committed this fraud scheme and Cesar committed this fraud scheme, hypothetically, for me, not so much for him, allegedly. But let's say both of us committed this fraud scheme, right? I have no prior exposure to the criminal justice system, so I've never been convicted of anything. He has prior convictions. Well, on the sentencing chart, he's looking at potentially more time than I am. So my plea agreement will probably be for far less time because I have no prior exposure. So the more criminal exposure you got, 1 conviction, 2 convictions, 3 convictions, now you got a new charge. That means, hey, we're going to push you to the maximum possible. But the max sentence is 20 years. Probably going to end up in a plea. I just don't see him taking this to trial. He would be utterly foolish. But there are 2 types of people who take cases to trial. One I like and one I loathe. Who's the one you like, DFD? I respect people who take cases to trial, who have a valid damn reason to take the case to trial. Either there's a legal principle that's at issue that you can argue, I can get on board with that. Or factually, there are some facts that are in your favor to show that you're not a fraudster or whatever crime you're being accused of. Those are the trials I like. Those are the trials where the jury go out and they deliberate for 4 or 5 days. You waiting for the longer, you're like, yes, they've been out for 4 days. Hey, the longer it go, I think the better it's going to be for us. Who are the type of guys who have trials who you loathe? The guys who are like, hey, I know they got me, but I'm going to make them work for it. Those are the guys, when they lose the trial, the judge gives them the maximum sentence. So the only way he goes to trial if he's guy number 2, if he's smart, he's probably the only way he goes to trial is because he's guy's number 2, because he definitely isn't guy number 1, because I don't think he has any facts or legal basis to have a legitimate trial where the jury would be like, I don't know if he didn't do it or not. It could be. I don't know. I just don't think that's the case. So if he goes to trial, it's because he's just being a douche. And normally how that works out is you get the maximum sentence. So don't go to trial for stupid reasons is the general rule if you don't have a real basis to go to trial. It's going to be interesting. The only other thing that I want to touch on before I get out of here is when we're looking at DJ Envy, we're looking at his trial exposure and all of this stuff. I don't know, man. I think it's going to be interesting, but I would bet my money. If I had to make a bet, I think that the bigger target is going to be DJ Envy. I think they're going to lean on Cesar. Cesar might be a stand-up guy and be like, hey, no snitching. I'm not saying nothing. But Cesar, if you don't say anything, I'm sure the other person will, because that's how it always plays out. Remember, with DJ Envy, these are allegations. We don't know if these are actual truths, so to speak. But the fact that they pull out computers at your place of business, it's not a good look. Where there's smoke, there's probably some type of fire. That's it for this video. Yo, I appreciate everybody tuning in. Let me see. Let me check out the comment. Hey, you can get it from some crowd on the internet. For some reason, people screenshot anything to keep it in a folder. Yeah, man, it's probably out there. They probably got a copy of the search warrant and everything out there. What I'll probably do is, because I'm on location now, so I'm somewhere else. There's a time difference. It's kind of wild. But what I'll probably do is, as some new facts develop with regard to DJ Envy, I'll probably do a live and just open it up, drop a link so people can ask questions that they have, if they got any questions from a legal standpoint, or if they want to disagree with me. You could be, because one of the things that it was stupid, but it was smart, was when DJ Envy actually talked about it. Why was it stupid? Because you should shut the hell up and listen to your attorney generally. Why was it smart? Well, DJ Envy is talking to millions of people when he does this on his radio show. So he effectively has the ability to taint a potential jury pool. So I could see it's probably more smart than stupid. He didn't say anything that was too ridiculous that probably could have hurt him criminally from what I heard. So I would probably say it was probably 60% smart, 40% stupid, because if you go on your radio show that's nationally syndicated to millions of people and say, I didn't do it, I didn't know, if those people believe that you were sincere, if you ever have a trial, chances are you're going to have someone on that trial who, that'd be the first question I ask for jury selection. Do you listen? Are you familiar with the Breakfast Club? You ever hear the phrase donkey of the day? Hey, those people probably heard it. It's a good chance to get some empathy from his perspective. Some people to potentially believe he's innocent, and really just contaminate the jury pool. So that was it. Oh man, Sidney Powell. That's funny. That's hilarious. But yeah, Cesar Pina, I wouldn't know who that dude was. That dude should be beside the ranch and the blue cheese, as far as I'm concerned. So DJ Envy gave him a lot of access to victims, and that's jacked up, man. We got to keep our head on the swivel. Both people want to take what you got, so don't let them take what you got. Yo, I'm out. If you like this video, check out the video on the screen. There's going to be more content related to finance and attorney reactions. Y'all be safe out there. Peace.